Welcome into HQ Spotlight. The countdown is just about done. In just a few hours, we will hear Roger Goodell take the podium to announce that first pick in the 2025 draft and beyond. I am Haley Sutton. I know we normally do our mock draft on Monday, but it's Thursday, it's draft day, so let's get to our mock draft. Cam Ward expected to come off the board first in Green Bay, but interesting note here when it comes to the draft, this is the only time since the merger every team still holds its first round pick this close to the draft, which means we should be hearing 32 names tonight come off the big board. That means, like I said, we've got one final chance to do a mock draft here on HQ Spotlight. You know we got to bring in the big guns when we're getting ready for a big event like the NFL draft. The guys look a little different than they did back in the day, out in their playing uniforms. We got Super Bowl champions. We've got NFL vets all across the board ready to join us here for this final mock draft ahead of round one out in Green Bay. As I mentioned, I'm Haley Sutton, and I'm joined by a cast of superstars. To my left, I've got Bryant McFadden and Lijah Douzable, and we've got our rookies, I will say, joining us this time around on the mock draft. We've got Cardale Jones and Damien Harris joining us to get the action started. Now, gentlemen, I get to play commissioner today.
Okay.
My one rule is I don't get booed. I'm not Roger, so you guys can't boo me. Also, you guys are making the pick, so if you want to boo each other, that's fine. Our producer, Boney, has given me the task of doing the first pick. And I will say, as an agent of chaos, I pushed him. I was like, what if I don't want to take Cam Ward? What if I want to do something different? So for the nature of this draft to get going, we know Tennessee is number one on the board. So my first act as commissioner here on our HQ Spotlight mock draft, I am taking Cam Ward, number one, to Tennessee. Now, before we kind of get into some of you guys' picks, I do want to come to you first on this, Lijah. And when we talk about Cam Ward, I feel like the conversation has just been he's the consensus number one. Right. He's going. But when you look at the situation he's stepping into, this is a Tennessee team that has the number one pick for a reason. What realistically can we expect from him?
Well, I think he's going to be a guy that changes that franchise around. What I really love what they did in the offseason, B-Mac, was they fortified the offensive line. They took a guy that you're very familiar with in Dan Moore. They're going to bring him over, make him left tackle. They took J.C. Latham last year, made him the left tackle, but his best position is right tackle. So right now you're going to have two book-end tackles. You're hoping Peter Skoronski had some medical issues a couple years ago. You think a year removed from that, he'd be even better. And Quisenberry at center as well. So I love how they fortified the offensive line for Cam Ward, because we know this, quarterbacks, if they have that protection up front, they'll feel more comfortable going through the progressions, making the throws. And when it comes to Cam Ward, he has arrogant arm talent. And when he throws in timing, there's no better quarterback in this draft. So I love how they refortified that offensive line before taking Cam Ward, potentially at number one overall. He
did speak to our Aditi Kinkhabwala out in Green Bay yesterday, and she asked him, she said, are you 100% certain that we're going to Tennessee? And he said, I'm not 100%, but I feel pretty good there. So I think we all are on the same page when it comes to that number one pick. Let's go number two. The Browns picking at number two. Our GM, Bryant McFadden, the GM there for the Browns. What do you think?
Well, because of my love, or the lack thereof, love for the Browns, being a former Steeler, I really want to do something that would not hurt the organization. But for this exercise, I got to be real. And with the Browns being number two, to improve their organization, I think the best player for them, and I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Abdul Carter at two. I love his skill set. We talked about the generational talent that he has. He's the best pure pass rusher in this game. And yes, the Cleveland Browns need a lot, especially at the quarterback position, fellas. But when you talk about who Abdul Carter is and what he can do to help improve their team, pairing him up with one of the best pass rushers in the game and Myles Garrett, I love that combination. Abdul Carter, he looks like what he hunts. He hunts quarterbacks. He looks like those guys in terms of the athleticism and just the nature that he displays week in and week out. And if you're trying to be relevant in the AFC North, you better go get guys that can make Lamar Jackson's life a little miserable, that can make Joe Burrow's life a little miserable, and whoever the quarterback is for the Pittsburgh Steelers, make their life a little miserable, and Abdul Carter will instantly provide that element to the Cleveland Browns on the defensive side.
Abdul Carter, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. He had 12 sacks. That was 7th in the FBS, 24 tackles for loss as well. We had a comp that he looked a lot like Micah Parsons, which makes sense when you see the number in the jersey, especially in that photo there. So we'll see how that works out. A lot of people have Travis Hunter going number two overall. Let's move on to the third pick. And for that, we go back to Lige. Lige, the Giants on the board, they added a pair of quarterbacks, and that was sort of the criticism of them going forward. We've seen conversations where they might take a quarterback there, but what's GM Lige Douzable going to do?
Well, because the Browns didn't take this unicorn, I'm going to take this unicorn and Travis Hunter, who is the best player in the draft. Now, the question will be, will he be an offensive weapon? Will he be a defensive weapon? Will he moonlight on both sides of the ball? And when you currently look at the Giants roster, right, paid Paulson Adebo this offseason to come in and play at corner. Really love Drew Phillips, who they took last year as their nickel slot corner. And they also have Deonte Banks, who's had some struggles, but he's a former first-round pick. So there's a bigger need on the offensive side of the ball. And I can't wait to see if he does fall to the 3 spot. A lot of people assume he's going number 2 to the Browns. But if he were to fall to the 3 spot, what Brian Daboll would do with his skill set, because when the ball's in the air, Travis Hunter just knows how to pluck it out of the air. He is the most athletic player in this draft. Suddenness at the top of the route. Now, he's not a true polished receiver when it comes to route running, but he is just a great football player. So I believe if he goes to either the Browns or the Giants, right, they need him more on the offensive side. He'll be a receiver from day one, and he'll moonlight on the other side on defense.
And listen, he is joining a team that desperately needs some wins. They went 3-4 last year, the G-Men did. That was or 3-14. Sorry, I was trying to skip them a little bit there. 3-14, the most losses in franchise history. As you take a look there at the numbers with Travis Hunter, I will just give you his specs there as you see it. Quite the decorated career for Travis Hunter.
Yes.
And with Lige having him head to the Giants. That means the Patriots are on the clock, and we get former Patriot Damien Harris in the driver's seat when it comes to their picks. Damien, the consensus, I think, across the board is that Drake May needs some protection. Is that where you're leaning with your pick there as GM?
Absolutely. You've got to take Will Campbell if you're the Patriots picking at number 4. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't care how short his arms are. I don't care what his wingspan is, because as long as he moves his feet, as long as he knows how to sit and anchor, he can protect against edge rushers with the longest arms. He can defeat any move as long as he plays with his feet, as long as he keeps his body between the defender and between the quarterback. And listen, let's make no mistake. This Patriots team, this organization, like Robert Kraft, granted, I'm not in his position, but I know how he prioritizes his quarterback one. With the addition of Stephon Diggs, that kind of slows down the urgency of, well, we need to get a receiver, we need a playmaker outside. Stephon Diggs is a veteran. He's a guy that's played a lot of football, and whenever he's at his best, he is a Pro Bowler, he is an All-Pro. But with that being said, now you have to focus on protecting Drake May, because he is their franchise. They've got all their eggs in his basket. And let's not forget, they just released David Andrews, who was an 8-time captain who spent an unbelievable amount of time in New England, won 2 Super Bowls, did a lot of really good things for New England. So you have to firm up the offensive line. Will Campbell is a guy that plays with an attitude. I remember back to the first game of the season when they were playing in Vegas. He said, we're not coming here to go to the casino. We're coming here to enter a dogfight. That's exactly the mentality that you need to play in New England, to play for Coach Mike Vrabel, the Patriot way. If you're the Patriots, you got to go Will Campbell at number 4.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one, because when you talk about you already got your franchise guy in that building, well, we need to start building the pieces around him to protect them. Who's better than the guy who played in arguably the toughest conference in all of college football versus some of the best pass rushers that have come out in this draft over the last 3 to 5 years and given up only 5 sacks during his whole career at LSU. So I love this pick for these guys. It get this team moving in the right direction, especially with a new head coach and trying to protect that young quarterback to get it ready for the future.
Hold on. I just want to say one thing before we move on. It's not arguably the best conference in football. Okay? All right.
Oh, here we go. The claws are already coming out.
There was a conversation this year.
Oh, my God. Who won the national championship this year?
Done.
Okay, all right. We're going to have to keep you guys separate. I will say that the Patriots were 1 loss away from locking up the number 1 overall pick when they beat the Bills in Week 18. Maybe things would have been different if they would have been picking number 1. But either way, Cardale, my good friend, you were on the clock. You were picking for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team we were talking about in the green room. I actually didn't even know that Mac Jones went to San Francisco. I was like, oh, my gosh. So clearly there's some moves that they've made that some of us aren't even aware of. So what are they doing with Cardale as their GM?
You know what? I'm going to go with Mason Graham, a guy out of Michigan who played a lot of football and who was kind of the anchor of that defense, especially through that national championship run. Why not pair this defensive line up with another dominant guy up front with Armstead and Hines Allen and Williams to really wreak havoc in that division far as when it comes to these quarterbacks? This draft is completely different from last year when you were so defensive heavily and you had guys all over the board. Well, now you have so many great offensive players that the Jaguars can come back in later rounds to pick some of these guys up to continue to build around Trevor Lawrence. So I'm going with Mason Graham.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Cardale. And I liken this to Draft Day. Everybody likes to watch that movie around this time because it's a similar scenario. In that movie, the Jaguars had a new young GM. Well, the Jaguars now have a new young GM in James Gladstone. Don't mess this up. Let's not forget, B-Mac, a couple years ago, they had the opportunity between Aiden Hutchinson and Travon Walker in regards to who they wanted to pick number 1 overall. Now, they went with the traits, and Travon Walker has turned into a really good pro. Back-to-back double-digit sack years. But 28.5 sacks is what Aiden Hutchinson has. And B-Mac, he only played 5 games last year.
Only.
So that lets you know the trajectory he's on in regards to what type of player he's going to be. Now you have an opportunity to take another Michigan man in Mason Graham, the best defensive tackle in football. You see the ranks right there when it comes to pressure, tackles, and sacks amongst defensive tackles over the last 2 years. Top 5 in all 3 of those categories. If you want to win games, you build it through the trenches, and Mason Graham will be another nice piece to kind of solidify that defensive line.
The small arms. Standing strong in this opening 5 picks.
He got busy his whole career. He's getting busy his whole career with them arms.
I just think that is such a funny thing to bring up, but it makes sense when you're talking about these positions. That kind of stuff matters. We also know that the Jaguars made a coaching change as well. Doug Peterson is out. Yep. Liam Cohen is in, and so we go to pick number 6. There was another coaching change out in Las Vegas. It is now Pete Carroll's Raiders. That's going to get some time, take some time to get used to. Be back. What do they do with that pick at number 6?
It's easy. You know, you're out in Vegas, you're trying to roll and hit that lucky 7. They will hit the lucky 7 with the number 6 pick, who is Ashton Jeanty. This is a team, offensively, they lack playmakers. Bringing in Geno Smith, big-time addition. I love that move, but outside of that, you know, Jacoby Myers really exceeded the expectations, but they don't have enough playmakers. Ashton Jeanty will be a big-time playmaker for this offense, and with his skill set, guys, he will provide what? Balance. You know anything about Pete Carroll throughout his coaching career, he loves the ability to run the football to set up the passing game. And Ashton Jeanty could be a reliable asset in the passing game because he has good hands for a running back. So I love everything about who Ashton Jeanty has been throughout his collegiate career. He's deserving of being selected in this spot. Instantly a day 1 starter, and he will improve the offense dramatically from day 1.
Yeah, B-Mac, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Ashton Jeanty is 1 of 1. He's the best running back in this class, and for good reason. We saw what he did in college. He was nearly impossible to tackle. Like you mentioned, his ability to catch the football out of the backfield will be huge for Geno. People don't even realize Ashton Jeanty was a wide receiver in high school, so he has a natural ability to catch the ball. And then again, B-Mac, like you said, adding that balance, because you've got Brock Bowers, who was a rookie phenom last year, is well on his way to being one of the great tight ends that we've seen in recent memory. Then you've got Jacoby Myers, who was an addition 2 years ago, who has a 0% drop rating since he has entered the NFL. So now you just need to supplement that with the run game. You've got your quarterback, you've got your 2 guys on the edge out in space that you can throw the ball to. Now you throw in Ashton Jeanty to break down the defense, wear down the teeth of the defense, make the linebackers step up on play action passes. That's gonna completely elevate your offense. And let's not forget, let's point out the glaring obvious right now. Beast mode, Ashton Jeanty, Ashton Jeanty, beast mode. Pete Carroll, I'm sure, is chomping at the bits to get an opportunity to have a second beast mode, and I think he'll get that if he gets Ashton Jeanty.
Well, we just saw it on that graphic. Lige, you and I both looking at the 2 different categories that we have for Ashton Jeanty, his total yards and then his yards after contact.
Unbelievable.
To your point, Damien, it's clear. He is the best running back.
And he's not 2.
He's not 2, and he is not 2. 1,970 rushing yards after contact.
Wow,
some guys
insane.
don't even rack that up in general. So very impressed with what Ashton Jeanty has been able to do. Let's move on to number 7. That, of course, is where we find Lige Douzable's New York Jets. You know, Lige, we make fun of the Patriots a lot for their lack of an offensive line, but I don't know that the Jets were much better. They gave Aaron Rodgers the boot. We got to be for real here, right? We got to be honest.
I mean, 4 of the 5 spots were actually pretty good, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, we'll let you keep your bias there. What's Lige do with the pick at 7?
Well, I'm going to solidify the offensive line.
Thank you very much.
Since you're coming at my Jets, Armand Membou, who probably has the highest upside at the offensive tackle position, will slide right in at right tackle. They took Olu Fashanu last year in the draft to solidify the blind side. They took Joe Tippmann a few years ago to be their center of the future. And even before that, they took AVT to be their guard of the future as well. So now you take a guy like Armand Membou, again, great footwork as a pass protector on the offensive line. Guy that gets really after guys in the run game, and he mauls guys. And again, to me, he has the highest upside. You want to be able to solidify that offensive line because you got Justin Fields coming in, right? And you know you're going to want to run the football. Well, the best way to do that is to have a physical, young offensive line. And the Jets can literally solidify their starting five with Armand Membou. You saw him right there. That was versus Donovan Ezeiruaku, who's going to be a guy in the first round. Made mincemeat of him. He's a guy that has the athletic ability to get to the second level and cut off backside defensive tackles on those zone plays away. So I think he's going to be a perfect fit for the Jets and solidify that offensive line.
And Leger, the thing I love about this pick for the Jets, Armand might not be the best available player, but he fulfills the biggest need.
And that's always the conversation.
That's always the conversation, because I feel like if you're not a winning organization, you don't have the luxury of always picking the best available player. Correct. Sometimes you have to attack the biggest need for your organization, and for the Jets, solidifying the right side, to your point, is more of a bigger need than addressing the best available player. And if you look at what Coach Aaron Glenn is coming from, he came from an offense that had 2 bookend tackles. They're in Detroit, and they did a lot of damage in the right way with their offense. So I think he's trying to recreate some of the things they were successful with doing in Detroit now in New York.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys. This is a great pick for a young team. This team is surrounded by young stars. Justin Fields, they just picked up this past offseason. Garrett Wilson on the outside, and then you look on the other side of the ball, Sauce Gardner and other dominant players who still on their rookie deals. Adding more rookies around this team can pretty much put them in position for success, not just now, but in the future as well. So I like the pick.
All right, our last pick of our first round here. We go back to Damien. It is the Panthers on the clock. Damien, who are we taking?
We're going linebacker from Georgia, Jalon Walker, which, first of all, Georgia does a phenomenal job at producing linebackers, and Jalon Walker is no different. He can play in space, he can rush the passer, he can do a lot of really good things well, and he can be a man in the middle for this defense that can be a good signal caller, that can wear the green dot, that can get communication out, get guys aligned properly, get the front right. He can do all of those things, and whenever he's flying around sideline to sideline, he is at his best. And it reminds me of a guy that the Carolina Panthers lost recently in Frankie Luvu. Frankie Luvu was a guy that was a Pro Bowler, has played at a very high level, and really manned the middle of that defense. And when I look at Jalon Walker, he is an exact replica of that, and that's who he can play like.
Yeah, Damien, I'm so glad you brought up Frankie Luvu, because that's actually my comp for him. And I think this is a perfect marriage for Jalon Walker to go to the Carolina Panthers. We'd love to see what defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero will do with his skill set, because he has that skill set like Frankie Luvu, where he can rush off the edge, but he can play off the ball linebacker, and is really good at dropping in zone coverage in those passing windows as well. I believe he'll be the best player in this draft when it's all said and done. So if he falls to 8, Carolina needs to run this card in.
All right, well, that'll do it for our first round here on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight's Players Only Mock Draft. One final look at those picks 1 through 8. The big surprise, BMAC taking Abdul Carter at number 2, clearing the way for the Giants to scoop up Travis Hunter at number 3. Plenty more to get through as we count down in our final mock draft here, our Players Only Mock Draft. When we come back, it is the Bears on the clock, or excuse me, the Saints on the clock, I should say. We'll see who they take. And what about my Cowboys? What are we doing at 12? That's what I want to know. We'll talk about it when we come back. Back here on HQ Spotlight in our Players Only Mock Draft. Excited to be joined by some phenomenal players. We're going to continue working through our mock draft here ahead of round 1 of the NFL Draft. We are handing things over to Cardale, where the Saints are on the clock. Cardale, obviously new head coach and all the things that come with that. Who is Kellen Moore going to get with that first pick?
You know, this is going to contradict my pick earlier in the show when I had Shedeur Sanders going number 9 with all the things that's going on with Derek Carr and his uncertain future with New Orleans. But I got to retract a little bit and go with, I think, one of the top 2 to 3 defensive players in this draft, and Mykel Williams out of Georgia, who just finished his 3rd year. But 2 years ago, you look back at Georgia's historic run in a national championship game, and they dominated TCU, and all the players they had drafted off that defense alone. He was considered one of the best players on that team as a freshman. So why not pair him up with a guy like with Jordan on the other side of him, and really learning from him to be a dominant defensive end in the NFL, and really kind of send him off to get his career started off in the right way.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this, Cardale, is I've been hearing this guy might go a lot higher than people expect. Like, top 10, I would say, going into this process was a little high for Mykel Williams. His comp for me was Jalon Walker. This was a guy that played some kind of head-up tackle, 3-4 tackle, played on the outside. And he dealt with an ankle injury last year. But in that Texas game, we kind of saw when he was finally healthy that with his length, he can really provide an issue, not only inside interior pass rushing, but on the outside as well. So I think a lot of teams are enamored with his traits and his length at the defensive tackle, defensive end position, and also how he's versatile, that he can kick inside and rush after the quarterback on third downs.
It's interesting. Our Aditi Kinkhabwala is out in Green Bay, and she has a report out that says she's being told Jackson Dart won't fall past that number 9 spot there for the Saints. So something interesting to pay attention to, especially when you think about what's going on with Derek Carr and his injury history. All right, let's keep it pushing here. B-Mac, I come back to you. The Bears on the clock. Who are they taking?
Well, you look at what they've done so far with new head coach Ben Johnson. They really revamped the offensive line. That was an Achilles heel for their offense a year ago. They're much improved, but I think they will continue to make improvements to the offensive line. So with the 10th pick, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Kelvin Banks Jr., talented left tackle from Texas. The reason why this makes all the sense in the world for Chicago, Darnell Wright is the bookend right tackle. When you look at Braxton Jones, he's coming into his 4th year. Of course, contract is right around the corner. You're adding depth, and you're potentially adding his replacement, especially if you're not able to sign him after this season. And you won't miss a beat because Kelvin Banks is one of the best left tackles in the game. I love his athleticism. I love his ability to finish, be violent with his finishes, not to mention the skill set and also the competition. He's played against a lot of high-level pass rushers throughout his collegiate career, especially a year ago, and he stood up and he did what he was supposed to do. This would be a big-time addition for the Chicago Bears.
You know what, B-Mac, I love this pick as well. And just like with the Patriots potentially taking Campbell to protect their young quarterback and their young guy of the future, I'm loving this for a guy like Caleb Williams to give him a little bit more confidence, because we have seen on an extremely high level, this is a Heisman Trophy winner, Heisman Trophy candidate, and a caliber player all throughout his college career, that he has the ability, he has the skill set, and it looks like they're trying to put the right things in place around him to have him opportunity to be successful with the Bears.
All right. If he does go, he would be the first Texas offensive lineman drafted in the first round since 2002. That was Mykel Williams, who got taken for the Horns there. Let's move on to the number 11 pick. That is held currently by the San Francisco 49ers. Lige, a team that was just decimated by injuries all across the board yesterday. So really, you can't go wrong with the pick here, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to fight go at the trenches with defensive lineman Walter Nolen. Robert Saleh, my guy, the defensive coordinator, is back with the San Francisco 49ers. And one thing, when you saw them have success and dominate on defense, they always had a defensive tackle that create havoc, whether it was DeForest Buckner or Eric Armstead. Right now, they don't have that currently on their team. Walter Nolen, people talk about Mason Graham. I don't think it's that far of a drop-off. When you talk about how disruptive he is, how he creates havoc in the backfield, he has tree trunks as legs. He's hard to move on double team, so he will fit perfectly in that system that Robert Saleh wants to implore for the 49ers and get them back to being a dominant defense, because he creates so much havoc in the middle of that defense.
All right, well, I would like for them just to hold off on a year so my Cowboys can catch up a little bit, because that's who's on the clock next at number 12. We know that the San Francisco 49ers, Damien, have just been one of the very many thorns in the Dallas Cowboys side, but you have a golden opportunity to make us better here. So who's Dallas taking at number 12?
Well, with a golden opportunity, I got to take somebody with a sweet name, and that would be Mr. Matthew Golden, receiver out of Texas. And first of all, this guy, whenever he ran that 4.3 flat at the NFL Combine, he made everybody's eyes open. He made people's jaws drop, because we knew he was a great receiver. We knew he could take the top off of a defense, but we didn't know he had speed quite like that. I think when you pair him with a guy like CeeDee Lamb, who honestly, they look kind of similar. They can play a similar style. I'd say CeeDee is a little bit better in the short area, intermediate parts of the field, but you've got a guy like Matthew Golden, who he might not be that big. He might not have the size of a Tet, but he's got the speed. He can get behind the defense and he can take the top off. He's that deep threat that Dak Prescott is looking for. And I promise you, if you draft Matthew Golden, you take a lot of pressure off CeeDee Lamb, but most importantly, you take pressure off of Dak Prescott, because you give him another option to get the ball to, somebody that he can just put some air under the ball and know that somebody's going to run underneath it. I mean, Matthew Golden has great ball skills. He can separate. He can make those contested catches, those 50-50 balls that quarterbacks love to throw up. And see their receiver come down with, for me, this is a no-brainer, especially because Matthew Golden is a Texas kid through and through. Born and raised in Texas, never been outside of the state of Texas to play football. I think if you're the Cowboys, you go and you get him somebody that's homegrown, somebody that's going to bring more fans to AT&T Stadium, and it's a match made in heaven if you pick Matthew Golden.
We saw very similar results when they drafted Tyler Smith. I think a lot of the fans were like, who is this Tyler Smith guy? And, of course, now he's one of our most consistent players on the line. And, B-Mac, I want to kind of follow up on that because you talk about taking the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, but ultimately they've got to have a functional offensive line in front of them in order for all of this to work. Yep. So are you okay with taking the wide receiver at 12, Lige, or like how are we feeling about how we address the line?
I'm okay with it because, according to our mock draft, the top 3 tackles are gone, right? And when you look at it, Tyler Guyton is a guy I think they need to move back to right tackle. So if Kelvin Banks was sitting there, maybe I would say you take him and move him to left tackle. Maybe move Terrence Steele into guard because he's done that before as well. But to Damien's point, I think you need to find an heir apparent to CeeDee Lamb because he needs some help on that offense. That's why in my mock draft I went Tetairoa McMillan just because I think he's a true X receiver. You can put his big body on the outside. He's going to demand that safety stay in the middle of the field because it's not 50-50 jump balls with him. It's 80-20. He's coming down with the ball. That frees up what CeeDee Lamb likes to do as far as being in the slot and moving him around. But I like the pick of Golden just because of the speed element. He's going to keep that safety in the middle of the field as well, too.
Tetairoa McMillan, a name that we have not heard in this mock draft as of late. We'll have to see if we hear him before this first round is done. In the meantime, Cardale, you are back on the clock. The Miami Dolphins need quite a bit. It has always been, or it has been, I should say, a tumultuous offseason for that crew. But Mike McDaniel has one final season, I feel like, to get this together. So what can he do there with that pick at 13?
You know, it starts with protecting Tua. This is the face of your franchise, and I'm going to go with Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. Left tackle. I know he got banged up versus Oregon and ended his season earlier, but he will be ready for the NFL start of the season. Actually, towards camp, he will be ready to get into that offensive line and start to learn that playbook and prepare himself for the season. We know how much Miami love to take shots downfield and throw to some of those speedy receivers on the outside. You got to start with protecting Tua, especially the last couple of years of injuries he had dealt with. Josh Simmons was playing some of the best football at tackle or of any offensive lineman all the way up until he got hurt during the Oregon game the first half of the season. He's not even just a dominant pass rusher. He can get it done in the run game as well. So if I'm Miami, I'm going with Simmons.
And the thing about Simmons here, guys, if he was healthy, he probably would not be available. He probably would be a top 10 pick. The versatility and the athleticism that he has, and this is a huge need for the Miami Dolphins. Teron Armstead just retired. The offensive line has been in a flux. They allowed Robert Hunt to leave. Clearly that was an issue. They should have retained his services. But one thing we know about their offense, because of the misdirectional mindset, if the offensive linemen are not doing what they're supposed to do, nothing works there in Miami for their offense. So being able to shore up the offensive line, not just to protect Tua Tagovailoa, but also to pave the way for the runners in terms of the running game, would be a huge asset. And I think Josh Simmons, especially if he's healthy, he will be a bookend day one starter and instantly provide an impact for their said offense.
All right, I was going to give Cardale a little bit of a pushback there with the Ohio State connection, but since you confirmed it, we'll stick with it. B-Mac, you were on the clock next. The Colts are selecting. A lot of the conversation has been around Anthony Richardson, the quarterback
Daniel
situation,
Jones.
Daniel Jones as well. What do you do with that pick?
Well, you have concerns with either quarterback. Whoever wins this quarterback job for Indy, you have concerns. So go get a player that can actually help the quarterback become a better quarterback. Tyler Warren, he is available. They haven't had consistent tight end production since the likes of Dallas Clark, oh, by the way, who also wore number 44. So think about this offensive mindset. Cardale, you played the quarterback position. How would you love the luxury of having to throw to a Tyler Warren, Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, and handing the football off to Jonathan Taylor? That would make any quarterback open their eyes and really salivate at the opportunity of being in the huddle with those said players. So if I'm the Indianapolis Colts, if Tyler Warren is available, you do not need to think about it. Go put his name in, make him an Indianapolis Colts.
Tyler Warren recorded the first season in Big Ten history with 8 or more receiving touchdowns and 4 or more rushing touchdowns as well. So you get that dual threat ability from him at the tight end position. Lige, back on the clock with the Falcons. What you got?
We attacking pass rush. I mean, the Falcons need it in the worst way. Now, they did bring in Leonard Floyd from San Francisco, who constantly gets 10 sacks every year, but they only signed him to a one-year deal. So I'm going Mike Green from Marshall, who was the most productive pass rusher in college football football last year. 17.5 sacks, and he has a pro mindset. The way he rushes the passer, it's almost like a chess game for him, the way he sets up moves. Talking about Ohio State, Cardale, that inside spin move that he hit versus their tackle was ridiculous. A reverse spin move to go get a sack. This guy has moves upon moves, and he's physical in the run game. People worried about his size because 2 springs ago he weighed about 238 pounds, but he weighed in at the Senior Bowl and at the Combine at 250 pounds. He can set up vertical edge. Raheem Morris, defensive-minded coach, they need to be able to get after the passer because they have not been able to do that the last couple
And this fulfilled 2 issues for Atlanta. Mike would be the best available player, and he will fulfill the biggest need. The last time they had a double-digit sack guy was 2016. The last time they had a guy get at least 7 sacks, 2019. It's been that long since they had individual production from an edge rusher, and I believe Mike Green could provide that.
All right, Mike Green, Adam Marshall. I love when those small guys get the recognition as well. Damien, the Cardinals on the clock next as their GM. What are you adding?
I'm going Shemar Stewart, defensive lineman from Texas A&M. And the reason why I say that is because I think the Arizona Cardinals are focusing on their defense. They just added Josh Sweat, Super Bowl champion from the Philadelphia Eagles. Phenomenal pass rusher, has elevated throughout his career. Now go and get you another edge rusher. I think that why not have 2 solid edge rushers, guys that can run the hump, that can beat the tackles to the spot, get to the quarterback, and also play well in the run game. I think that once you're set up front, then you can start to prioritize the back end, linebacker, secondary. But I think adding another great pass rusher, I think that'd be paramount for Arizona.
That is our final pick of round 2's mock draft here on HQ Spotlight, our players only mock draft. Here's one final look back at picks 9 through 16. So we saw a wide receiver off the board. It is Matthew Golden headed to the Dallas Cowboys. But the names we haven't heard might be more interesting. After the break, we come back with our next round of selections. There he is, Tetairoa McMillan. It's not taken off the board in this round of the mock draft. Neither is this guy, fellow Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka. We will see where these guys go after this. Back here on our players only mock draft here on HQ Spotlight, we are picking things up with our guy Cardale. Back-to-back picks for you, Cardale. So let's start with the Bengals at number 17. What you got?
This one is easy because as we've seen this past offseason, the Bengals are committed to spending big bucks on the offensive side of the ball. So I think they're going to go with the defensive side of the ball when you talk about the draft. And I'm going with a guy, Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, another great interior defensive lineman, especially with the departure and retirement of Sam Hubbard and other defensive linemen, potentially 1 foot in and 1 foot out on that defense. This defense is going to look completely different. Clearly the big bucks was spent on the other side of the ball with Chase and Higgins getting those huge extensions. So we can expect heavy draft defensive players for the Bengals.
All right, so no Ohio State pick there, but you're back on the clock here.
Wait, there's more.
There's more. Seahawks picking at number 18. I'm going to guess you're taking a Buckeye at this pick.
You know, that is a great guess right there. I'm going with Emeka Egbuka, a guy that's from that area who's going back home. And you look at the Seahawks and kind of they in I wouldn't say a rebuilding phase, but a revamping phase. You see what they did with Cooper Kupp, added him, and then also having another Buckeye there, Jackson Smith-Njigba. But none of these guys have the deep ball threat and ability like Emeka Egbuka and the consistency that he showed over his career at Ohio State to play more than just an interior receiver. He can play outside and they can get him the ball in many different ways, as you see here. So I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. Is going to be a great addition for that offense, and a lot of skilled players surrounding Sam Darnold.
Yeah, big-time player for Ohio State. Wide receiver U is what we have crowned that school. So big pick there. Still no Tet McMillan, though. I have a feeling, though, Damien, that's going to change here in a second. The Buccaneers on the clock, and you have them taking Tet here at number 19.
Absolutely. I think this is a perfect fit for Tet and for the Buccaneers because when I look at Tet McMillan and what he does well, he's a big physical receiver. He can take the top off the defense, and he can win those 50-50 or 80-20 balls, as Lige said earlier. But when I compare him to guys in the NFL, and I've heard a lot of different comps, Larry Fitzgerald, a guy here, a guy there. When I look at Tet, all I see is Mike Evans reincarnated. And with Mike Evans being on the end of his career, on his last leg, which, I mean, he's still putting out 1,000-yard seasons, but what a leader for Tet to step in and follow and learn from, learn how to use his body, learn how to use his size, learn and craft how to go go up and get those footballs, how to work the short intermediate routes, because we know Mike Evans isn't just a deep threat. He can run every route on the route tree, so he can help polish and help Tet mature over time. And then whenever it's time for Mike Evans to enjoy retirement and sell off into the sunset, then Tet steps in and he's your next guy, your next big body target for Baker Mayfield that you're expecting 1,000 yards from every season.
As commissioner, I'm going to step in here, and I want to push back a little bit on Cardale's picks, because we talked about Emeka Egbuka being taken there ahead of Tet McMillan. This is purely producer Boney, so if you're mad at me, be mad at him.
I want him to go back home.
But in all seriousness here, Cardale, you passed on T-Mac. You went with Emeka. Is that just the connection to Ohio State, or what is it that made you take it?
You know what made me take him, because I want him to go back home. Why not? It's pretty cool. But you know what, the great thing about this draft, and I said it earlier during the show, that this is a draft that's filled with offensive studs all over the ball. So I don't think no team can go particularly wrong with any of these guys. But yeah, if I got to give the notch to one of the guys over another, clearly that Ohio State Buckeye is going to give him that extra notch.
I was going to say, we saw.
You might not want to be a GM, bro.
No. Sometimes in corporate America, guys, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So if I'm a GM, I'm going to get the Buckeyes. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, just a reminder, the Seahawks did trade away DK Metcalf. He is now in Pittsburgh. He is being replaced by Ohio State Buckeye Emeka Egbuka. All right, let's move on here. Enough roasting Cardale in this draft. We're going to the Broncos, and we're going back over to Lige. Broncos picking at number 20. A lot of people had Ashton Jeanty to this point, but he's gone. Who you take?
Yeah, they would have had to trade way up to get Ashton Jeanty, but I'm going with the guy that some people consider the best tight end in this draft, and that's Colston Loveland. Yes, I know they signed Evan Ingram, but Colston Loveland is a guy that can stretch the defense down the seam. He has great ball skills and body control. And people talk about his lack of blocking. Let's not forget he had a shoulder injury the entire year, B-Mac, that he played with. And I saw him at the combine. He had to get the surgery. He'll be ready for training camp. But when I turned on the tape, he was a willing blocker. And I think he'll still grow into his body. So this is a guy, I think, that when you look at Sean Payton in his history of having a guy like Jimmy Graham, a guy in the red zone that can go up and get the ball, a guy that can attack the middle of the field, I think Colston Loveland makes a lot of sense to the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Evan Ingram thing, because that was going to be my pushback there. Why do they need another tight end? But
well, I think the upside is a lot higher for Colston Loveland than Evan Ingram. And again, Evan Ingram is essentially an extra receiver out there. You rarely see him in the box. I think with Colston Loveland and his body frame, he can actually be an inline blocker as well and grow into that body.
All right, let's go to B-Mac Steelers. B-Mac, we haven't heard from you in a minute, so I'm excited to hear your pick at 21. We've talked a lot about Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback out there, but you got your eyes on a draft pick here.
You better believe it. I've been quietly, patiently waiting for this opportunity, hoping the draft boards falls in line to what we need, and of course being able to add a huge playmaker to the team. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can say whatever you want to say, Steeler Nation. I know some people are good about this pick, might not be good about this pick, but I am the GM, and I like it, and I stand by it. I had Pittsburgh taking Shedeur Sanders. The thing about this pick for me, guys, it's very, very weird for a player, once football was done, to be considered a for sure first-round selection, potentially a for sure top 15 pick, and now while ball has not been in play, he's lost draft leverage because of these anonymous quotes. People are saying this, people saying that, and what that does is it forces you to take a side. Even if you don't know Shedeur Sanders, even if you never met him in person or had any conversation or dialogue with him, because of what you're hearing, it forces you to take a side, and unfortunately, it really hampers draft stocks. We see this year in and year out. All the time at the prominent positions, there's always these different weird things that are coming about these players that are not basically ball related that hurts their draft stock. And if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, we talk about need, they need a quarterback. Big Ben retired in 2021. A list of guys who started for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the quarterback position: Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. I mean, that's not a winning list. And because of the lack thereof, Kenny Pickett, because of the lack of success, you still don't have a plan at the quarterback position. Nice. Don't overthink this thing. You turn the tape. This kid can play football, and that should be the tell-all, be-all in terms of drafting him, in my opinion.
Yeah, when you look at the Steelers, if they decide to go in the quarterback direction, this is the best quarterback in this draft that you can pick at your position during the time that you're drafting. And you look at some of the numbers that you just displayed on the graphics there. Third down, red zone, and blitzes is usually big categories where we define quarterbacks. And usually, if you're doing really good in those situations, the team is doing really good as a team overall. So I think they got the right pieces around him to help him be a great professional quarterback. And I think Mike Tomlin, you look at what he's able to do over the last close to 20 years of his career and really being a leader of men. And he can be the guy to help really mold Shedeur and some of those, I would say, stereotypes that you've been hearing over the last probably about 2 to 3 weeks when it comes to draft time.
Listen, Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, the current quarterbacks on the roster, they need some help for sure. All right, let's move on here. Keep it moving with the Chargers picking at number 22. Cardale, you've had a very busy round 3 here. You were back on the clock. Let's see if it's an Ohio State Buckeye. What do you think?
You know, I'm going to go with Jack Sawyer. No, I'm just joking. I got Jihaad Campbell, and I think, you know, you look at the departure of Joey Bosa, all-pro caliber player during his time with the Chargers, and we know what Harbaugh loves to do and how you feel about his defenses. You add a guy like this on the defense side of the ball, it's going to elevate you guys, and hopefully you guys will have him for the long run and continue to do some good things out there in the NFC West.
Wait, so Cardale, since you're GM of the Chargers and you just drafted an Alabama guy, can I get a Roll Tide?
No,
come on now. You're GM and you just picked a Bama guy. Hold on. You're not wearing the Ohio State hat right now.
I totally agree. I'm trying to be neutral, so I can't let
go. Oh, now we're being neutral. All right, well, let's pivot over.
You don't play fair. You can't play with him. He don't play fair.
Damien, you can give us a Roll Tide and give it with your pick here at 23. The Packers on the clock.
Well, first of all, Roll Tide to anybody listening. But I got to tell you, when I make this pick, I feel a little bit like Nico Harrison right now with the potential of who I'm about to draft.
Now I gotta go.
Yeah, this could lead to some Nico Harrison type pushback, if I'm being honest. But at this position, especially looking at what they're about to do with Jaire Alexander and potentially trading him, moving him off somewhere, you need to attack the DB position. So in my opinion, you've got to go with Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan. Now, why do I say I feel like Nico Harrison? Because there is a foot problem going on with Will Johnson that a lot of people are concerned about. He didn't run at his private workout. He hasn't played football in a really long time. We haven't seen him on tape. But when he's healthy, when he's on the football field, I think he's the best defensive back that we've seen in the country this past season. So I'm making that pick. I'm going to live with what happens after that, but that's my pick. I'm going Will Johnson.
GM Damien, you talked about the foot element. That's a huge, significant concern for a guy who utilizes speed and quickness, and that has to be his say-all, be-all. How close were you in terms of course, you took Will Johnson, but there were other prominent corners that are more healthier, and of course showing the foot speed to be able to be worthy of a first-round selection?
It was close. I was splitting hairs. There were like you said, there are a lot of other talented DBs that could have been taken. But again, I will reemphasize that when Will Johnson is healthy, I think that he's the best corner in this draft. So I'm going to bank on the fact that he is healthy. I'm going to bank on the fact that day one of training camp, he's going to be ready to go, and that foot is going to be healthy, and then he's going to be a cornerstone piece of my defense.
Our resident secondary member, do we get a thumbs up or a thumbs down for that pick?
To be determined.
Oh, okay. We'll give it like a half pick here.
I'm fine with that.
Lige, you got our final pick here in our round 3 spotlight mock draft. It is the Vikings. Who are they taking?
They're taking a cyborg in safety, Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. I mean, 6'3", 220 pounds, and ran a 4.38. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, it's not even fair what he can do athletically at that size. I think you pair him with Brian Flores in that defense and how multiple he is in regards to being inventive on third down packages. He can play in the box. He can play middle field safety. He can even play some dime linebacker for you. This is a guy that plays with physicality, but also has the athletic ability to break on passes. So I think he's a perfect fit for Brian Flores' defense.
Yeah, we remember how good Brian Flores' defense was just a year ago. All right, got to hit another timeout here. One last look at picks 17 through 24. We've got one final mock draft block here on HQ Spotlight. When we come back, we are tackling those final few picks. Who will be the big name to go in that last round here on Spotlight? We'll talk about it next. Our fourth and final round here on our Players Only mock draft on HQ Spotlight, and we're going to go quick. B-Mac, I'm handing it over to you. The Texans on the clock.
This is easy. Tyler Booker, still available, big time, the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. Strong, massive individual, played against high-level competition. And this is a huge need for the Houston Texans because they moved on from 2 starters from the offensive line play a year ago. They were horrible, right? Larry Tunsil moved on from him, Kenyon Green. Collectively as a unit did not do what they were supposed to do. Now you're revamping the offensive line to be able to protect your third-year quarterback and the great Ohio State Buckeye, C.J. Stroud.
Love it.
No question, I had to throw it in there. So this is an easy play for the Houston Texans. Tyler Booker is the name. He's the draft pick.
So can I get a roll tide, B-Mac? Can I get a roll tide from somebody? I mean, we just shout out Buckeyes left and right. Like,
I'll give you a roll tide, Damien. Roll tide and go Buckeyes. The Buckeyes on the clock next.
You did both.
With I had to connect it. I got to pick a side. I already took a dig at Leger's Jets earlier, so I've got to make up for it. Cardale, you're back on the clock with the Rams picking at 26.
You know, with the departure of Cooper Kupp, I think they're leaking some more playmakers on the outside, so I'm going to go with my guy Luther Burton III out of Missouri. You put him on the other side of Puka. Luther Burton III, to me, is a Deebo Samuel type of player, 2.0, with the speed and ability to take a home run, to be a home run threat for the Rams like a Jamar Chase. So this is an easy pick.
All right, easy pick there. Let's see if it's easy for Damien at 27 with the Ravens.
I think this is easy as well. You focus on the defensive side of the ball. Then you look, your run defense is first in the league. Your pass defense is 31st in the league. You need somebody to pair up with all-pro corner Marlon Humphrey. So I'm going with Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky. He's a true lockdown corner. He can play zone. He can play man. I think he'll be a good counterpart to Marlon Humphrey. And I think that he can kind of tie this secondary together. Obviously, they've got Kyle Hamilton, one of the most elite safeties in the National Football League. I think that would be really, really good for the Ravens to focus on their pass defense because offensively, they're good. Defensively, stopping the run, they're good. They need help in the secondary and stopping the passing threat.
The Lions up next on the clock at 28. That pick belongs to our Leger. By the way, Leger, Jets, Jets.
I love it.
Give
See the green on. Shout out to our producer, Michael Bonavita, because it seems like he knew exactly the teams to pair me with because I've been giving a lot of teams pass rushers. I'm going to give the Lions, who have a need at pass rush, another one of the top and most polished pass rushers, and Donovan Ezeiruaku from Boston College, who had over 16 sacks. He's a guy that can get after the passer. You hope that Aiden Hutchinson can come back healthy. He has needed somebody to pair with him the last couple years. That way they can take some pressure off Aiden Hutchinson. Donovan Ezeiruaku can get after the quarterback. People were worried about his run defense. Go turn on that North Carolina tape. A team that loves to run the football. He was dominant against the run as well. So I think he pairs nicely with Aiden Hutchinson, and those two guys can get after the quarterback.
Detroit, a team that surprised a lot of people, but did not surprise them more than what the Commanders did a year ago. No one expected them to play the way they did with a rookie behind center. B-Mac there on the clock at 29.
Defense is the direction for the Commanders. I really love their offense and what they've done thus far in improving the offense. Let's go improve the defense. Jahdae Barron is the pick for me. Many felt like he is the best cornerback in this draft, and still being available at 29 is a luxury for the Commanders. You look at what they will face in their conference, in their division. You got A.J. Brown, you got Smitty, Devontae Smith. You see twice a year. You better have corners that can cover those said players. You look at C.D. Lamb, and for our draft, remember the Cowboys also added Matthew Golden. You look at the New York Giants, you got Malik Neighbors. For our draft, the Giants added who? Travis Hunter. So you better make sure you got guys in the back end that can cover. And oh, by the way, Jahdae has the versatility to play inside dime or outside corner, and he won't be a liability. You better believe he'll be an asset.
All right, we go to the Bills at number 30, and that GM is Cardale. Cardale, surprise us. What we got?
I'm going with Malachi Starks out of Georgia, a guy that was a 3-time All-American, a guy that is a definition of a field general on the back end that really is going to add some value to this back end. I wouldn't say that he was hurting last year, but yeah, I mean, he is the best player to me but to this point whose availability left, so I'm going with him.
We got a running back. Potentially taking a running back at number 31. Damien, it is the Chiefs on the clock, our penultimate pick, and who are you taking?
First of all, spoiler alert. But what I will say is, to B-Mac's point earlier, the Chiefs are a team that do have the luxury of taking the best available player as opposed to addressing a particular need. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they need to add offensive line depth. They need to protect Patrick Mahomes because we saw with Philadelphia Eagles how they got after him, how they affected him in the Super Bowl. Hold your horses. They won 2 Super Bowls before that. Take the best player available, which happens to be a running back by the name of Amarian Hampton out of North Carolina. He's a big, physical north and south runner. He's 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's a bruiser, but he's got 4.4 speed, so he can hit the home runs, hit his head on the goalpost. Pair that with Patrick Mahomes, get them back to being two-dimensional, not just relying on Patrick's arms, and then you'll be back in contention for another Super Bowl.
All right. Don't know that I love hearing that the Chiefs are already back in playoff contention, but we move on. Lee J, you have our final pick. It is the Philadelphia Eagles who have that number 32 spot.
Yeah, I'm going offensive tackle from Penn State, Josh Connerly. Now, they have the luxury of being a team that can go for depth, right, instead of going for need, because they have their needs already met. And I know Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata is there, but eventually Lane Johnson is going to move on. And when you look at Connerly versus Abdul Carter, he was the best tackle versus Abdul Carter this past year. This is a guy that has versatility to play both tackles and guard positions, so I think he makes a lot of sense for the Eagles at the last pick.
And that's it. 32 picks from our players-only mock draft. Let's get a look at those final few players there, 25 for 32. We'll see which team gets better with these picks as the NFL draft gets underway later tonight.